Why do you feel guilty every time you rest? Why does a compliment feel like a lie? Why do you apologize for crying, for needing, for simply existing? You've been told you're strong, resilient, that you turned out fine. But fine is a mask too, and behind it, there's a child who learned that love is earned through silence, that safety comes from being invisible, that your needs don't matter as much as everyone else's comfort. Today, we're going to uncover why. He's 7 years old, sitting at the kitchen table, staring at his hands, small hands, hands that don't know yet how heavy they'll become. His mother is in the next room. He can hear her, the muffled sound of her crying, the kind that tries to hide itself but bleeds through the walls anyway. He wants to go to her, wants to ask if she's okay, wants to be held, to be told that everything will be all right. But he's learned not to, because the last time he cried, she looked at him with exhausted eyes and said, "Not now. I can't handle this right now." So he sits, still, silent. He learns to read the room before he enters it, to scan faces for signs of danger, to make himself smaller, quieter, less. He learns that his feelings are too much, that his sadness is a burden, that his joy is inconvenient. He learns that love is conditional, that it must be earned, that it can be lost if he asks for too much. And so, he stops asking. He becomes the child who never complains, who always says, "I'm fine," who learns to carry his own weight before his bones are strong enough to hold it. This is how it begins, not with violence, not with cruelty, but with absence. This is what happens when a child's emotional needs are met with silence, when their tears are met with irritation, when their joy is met with indifference, when their very existence feels like an inconvenience. It's called childhood emotional neglect, and it's one of the most invisible forms of trauma because it's not about what happened to you, it's about what didn't happen. No one hit you, no one screamed, no one locked you in a closet. From the outside, everything looked fine. You had food, clothes, a roof over your head, maybe even good grades and extracurricular activities. But inside, you were starving. Starving for someone to ask, "How are you feeling?" Starving for someone to notice when you were struggling. Starving for someone to tell you that your emotions weren't too much, that you weren't too much, that you were allowed to take up space in this world. And when that starvation goes unnoticed for years, it doesn't just disappear when you grow up. It follows you into your relationships, into your career, into the way you see yourself. It becomes the voice in your head that says, "You're being dramatic, you're overreacting, you should be grateful, other people have it worse." But here's the question we're going to answer today. What happens to that child? If you've ever felt guilty for resting, keep listening. If you've ever apologized for crying, this is for you. If you've ever felt like you're too much and not enough at the same time, you're in the right place. Because emotionally neglected children grow into adults who carry invisible wounds. They become the people who can't accept compliments without deflecting, who flinch when someone asks, "What do you need?" Who say, "I'm fine," even when they're falling apart. They become adults who are terrified of being a burden, who overfunction in every relationship, who give and give and give until there's nothing left and then feel guilty for being empty. They become the friend everyone leans on, but who never leans back. The partner who loves deeply but can't believe they're loved in return. The employee who works themselves to exhaustion because productivity feels like proof of worth. And the most heartbreaking part? They don't even realize it's connected to their childhood. Because when neglect is invisible, so is the wound. You can't point to a specific moment and say, that's when it happened. It was 1,000 small moments, 1,000 times your feelings were dismissed, 1,000 times you learned that you didn't matter as much as you needed to. And now, decades later, you're still living like that child at the kitchen table, still making yourself smaller, still waiting for permission to exist. So let me ask you something. Do you struggle to identify what you're feeling? Like someone asks, "How are you?" and you genuinely don't know. You say fine because it's easier than excavating the mess inside. Do you become extremely defensive when someone asks a simple question? What are you doing? Feels like an accusation. Are you okay? Feels like an attack. Because growing up, questions weren't curiosity, they were preludes to criticism. Are you a people pleaser? Not just agreeable, not just kind, but someone who can't relax until everyone else is happy. Someone who reads the room like it's a survival skill, because it was. Do you find it almost impossible to ask for help? You'd rather struggle alone, fail alone, suffer alone, than risk being told you're too much, too needy, too weak. Do you feel intense shame after the smallest mistake? You spill coffee and feel like you've committed a crime. You forget something minor and spiral into self-hatred. Because you learned early that mistakes meant you were unworthy of love. Do you want to isolate all the time? Being around people is exhausting because you're constantly performing, constantly managing their emotions, constantly making sure you're not too much. So you retreat, you hide, you disappear into yourself because it's the only place that feels safe. Do you lie compulsively? Not maliciously, but reflexively, because the truth was never safe. Your real feelings were never welcome. So you learned to hide them, to protect them, to keep them locked away where no one could invalidate them. Do you struggle to make decisions? Because you're so disconnected from your own wants and needs that you genuinely don't know what you prefer. And if you do know, you're terrified of choosing wrong and disappointing someone. Do you seek out emotionally unavailable partners? This one's going to hurt, but you're drawn to people who can't fully show up for you. Because that's what love looked like growing up. Distant, conditional, always just out of reach. If you recognize yourself in even 3 of these, keep listening, because we're about to uncover why. And maybe you're thinking, but I had a good childhood. Maybe your parents weren't abusive. Maybe they provided for you. Maybe they even loved you. And they did, in the only way they knew how. But love without emotional attunement isn't enough. A child needs more than food and shelter. They need to be seen, to be heard, to be told that their feelings matter. And when that doesn't happen, the child doesn't think, my parents are emotionally unavailable. They think, I'm too much. I'm the problem. I need to be better. So you became better. You became the perfect child, the one who never complained, the one who got good grades and didn't cause trouble, the one who made yourself so easy to love that maybe, just maybe, you'd finally feel loved. But it didn't work, did it? Because no amount of achievement can fill the void left by emotional neglect. You can have the career, the relationship, the life everyone envies, and still feel like you're pretending. Like you're waiting for someone to discover you're a fraud. Because deep down, you still believe what that 7-year-old learned. That you're only valuable when you're useful. That love is something you earn, not something you deserve. That your needs are a burden, and that belief is killing you. But here's what you need to understand. This isn't a personality flaw. This isn't you being too sensitive or overthinking. This is your nervous system doing exactly what it was trained to do. When you're a child and your emotional needs are consistently unmet, your brain makes a decision. It decides that emotions are dangerous, that expressing needs leads to rejection, that the safest way to survive is to become invisible, and so it builds walls, develops hypervigilance, creates coping mechanisms that helped you survive childhood but are now suffocating you in adulthood. You learn to read micro-expressions before you could read books. You learn to manage other people's emotions before you understood your own. You learned that your value was tied to your usefulness, your silence, your ability to not need anything. And now, as an adult, you're still operating from that programming. You're still that child at the kitchen table, scanning the room for danger, making yourself small, waiting for permission to exist. But here's the thing nobody told you. The danger is gone. The people who couldn't meet your needs then don't control your life now. But your nervous system doesn't know that. It's still protecting you from a threat that no longer exists. And that's why healing feels so hard, because you're not just changing your thoughts, you're rewiring your entire survival system. Let me explain what actually happened in your brain. When a child experiences consistent emotional neglect, their brain is literally shaped by that absence. In the first few years of life, your brain is building neural pathways at an extraordinary rate. It's learning how the world works, how relationships work, how you fit into all of it, and it learns through experience. When a baby cries and someone comes, they learn, my needs matter. I am safe. The world is responsive. But when a child cries and no one comes, or worse, when someone comes with irritation or dismissal, they learn something very different. They learn, my needs are a burden. I am alone. I must handle everything myself. This is called attachment theory. And children who grow up without consistent emotional attunement develop what's called insecure attachment. They don't learn to trust that others will be there for them. They don't develop a secure sense of self-worth. They don't internalize the belief that they are inherently valuable. Instead, they internalize the opposite. And here's where it gets even more damaging. When emotional needs are consistently unmet, the brain starts producing stress hormones, cortisol and adrenaline at elevated levels. For a developing brain, this is toxic. It affects the hippocampus, which is responsible for memory and emotional regulation. It affects the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for decision-making and impulse control. It keeps the amygdala, the fear center, in a constant state of hyperactivation, which means you grow up with a brain that's wired for threat detection. You're always scanning for danger, always waiting for the other shoe to drop, always convinced that if you let your guard down, something bad will happen. This isn't anxiety. This is your brain doing exactly what it was trained to do, keep you safe in an environment where emotional expression was dangerous. But you're not in that environment anymore. And that's the tragedy. You're still living like you are, and maybe you've achieved everything you thought would make you happy. The degree, the job, the relationship, the house, the life that looks perfect on paper. But you still feel empty. You still feel like you're waiting for your real life to start. You still feel like you're performing, pretending, playing a role. Because success doesn't heal emotional neglect. Achievement doesn't fill the void left by a childhood where you weren't allowed to just be. You can be the most successful person in the room and still feel like that 7-year-old at the kitchen table, desperately trying to earn love through silence. And the cruelest part? The very traits that helped you survive, the hyperindependence, the perfectionism, the people-pleasing, are the same traits that are now preventing you from healing. Because healing requires vulnerability. It requires admitting you need help. It requires letting people see you when you're not perfect, not productive, not useful. And that feels impossible. Because the last time you were vulnerable, you were met with absence. The last time you had needs, you were made to feel like a burden. So you learned to bury them, to bury the child who needed comfort, who needed reassurance, who needed to be told they mattered. You buried them so deep you forgot they were there. But they didn't die. They're still waiting. Do you see the connection now? The reason you can't rest without guilt is because rest was never safe. The reason you can't accept compliments is because praise was always conditional. The reason you can't ask for help is because asking meant rejection. The reason you feel like a burden is because your needs were treated like burdens. Every behavior that's making your life harder now was once a survival strategy. Hyperindependence kept you safe when depending on others meant disappointment. People-pleasing kept you safe when other people's emotions determined your safety. Perfectionism kept you safe when mistakes meant you were unlovable. Emotional suppression kept you safe when expressing feelings meant being dismissed or punished. These weren't choices. These were adaptations. Your child self did the best they could with what they had. They built walls to protect a heart that was too tender for the world it was born into. They learned to survive in an environment that couldn't hold them, and those walls saved you. But now they're a prison, because the same strategies that protected you then are now keeping you from the connection, the rest, the love you desperately need. You're safe now, but you don't feel safe, and that's the work. Not to shame yourself for these patterns, but to understand them, to thank them for keeping you alive, and then, gently, to begin dismantling them. But here's the truth nobody tells you. The truth that's going to hurt and heal at the same time. You didn't have a childhood, you had a performance. You were a child playing the role of an adult because the actual adults couldn't handle being adults. Maybe your parent was depressed, maybe they were overwhelmed, maybe they were dealing with their own unhealed trauma. And so you became the emotional regulator. You became the one who managed the mood of the house. You became the one who made sure everyone else was okay, even though you were just a child who needed someone to make sure you were okay. This is called parentification, and it's a form of emotional abuse, even if it wasn't intentional, because a child should never have to earn their parents' emotional stability. A child should never have to shrink themselves to make space for an adult's feelings. A child should never have to become a therapist, a mediator, a caretaker. But you did. And now, as an adult, you're still doing it. You're still managing everyone else's emotions. You're still making yourself small to make others comfortable. You're still performing the role of the strong one, the reliable one, the one who has it all together. But you're exhausted because you never got to be the child. You never got to be messy, needy, imperfect. You never got to learn that love isn't something you earn. It's something you deserve simply because you exist. And that's the wound. Not that you were hit or screamed at, but that you were never allowed to just be. You were never given permission to have needs, to make mistakes, to be human. And so you grew up believing that your humanity was a flaw, that your needs were too much, that you were too much. But you weren't. You were just a child who needed what every child needs, to be seen, to be heard, to be held. And you didn't get that. And I'm so sorry. You didn't deserve that. You were just a child who needed protection, who needed safety, who needed to be allowed to just be a child. But instead, you were forced to grow up too fast. You were forced to become the adult in the room when the actual adults couldn't handle their own emotions. And now, decades later, you're still carrying that weight. You're still the one who has to be strong, the one who has to have it all together, the one who can't fall apart because if you do, who's going to hold everything together? But here's what I need you to understand. That wasn't love. That was survival. What you learned wasn't how to be loved. It was how to be useful, how to be needed, how to earn your place in the room by making yourself indispensable. And I know you're tired tired of being strong, tired of being the one everyone leans on, tired of pretending you're fine when you're falling apart inside. So let me say this clearly. You are allowed to be tired. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to not have it all together. You are allowed to be human. Your worth is not determined by how much you can carry. Your value is not measured by how useful you are to others. You are worthy of love simply because you exist, not because of what you do, not because of what you achieve, not because of how much you give, simply because you are. And I know this hurts. I know it's painful to realize that the childhood you deserved never happened, that the parents you needed weren't capable of being those parents, that the love you craved was always just out of reach. And it's okay to grieve that. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to feel the loss of something you never had, because that loss is real. You lost the chance to be a carefree child. You lost the chance to make mistakes without shame. You lost the chance to have needs without guilt. You lost the chance to be loved unconditionally without having to earn it. And that's a profound loss, one that deserves to be mourned. So if you need to cry, cry. If you need to rage, rage. If you need to sit with the heaviness of this realization, sit with it. Don't rush past it. Don't try to get over it. Don't tell yourself you should be grateful because other people had it worse. Your pain is valid. Your grief is real, and you deserve to feel it. Because you can't heal what you don't acknowledge. You can't move forward if you're still pretending the wound doesn't exist. So acknowledge it, feel it, and know that on the other side of this grief is something you've been searching for your entire life: freedom. But here's the good news. The news that makes all of this worth facing. You can heal. Not because you're broken, you're not, but because you're finally ready to stop living like that 7-year-old at the kitchen table. You're ready to stop making yourself small. You're ready to stop earning love you should have been given freely. You're ready to stop carrying a weight that was never yours to carry. And healing is possible. Not easy, not quick, not linear, but possible. Because your brain, the same brain that was shaped by neglect, has something called neuroplasticity, which means it can change. It can form new pathways. It can learn new patterns. It can unlearn the belief that you're too much, that your needs are burdens, that love must be earned. You're not stuck with the programming from childhood. You can rewrite it. And I'm going to show you how. Not with vague advice like just love yourself or let it go, but with concrete, actionable steps that actually work. Because you've been strong enough. You've been independent enough. You've been selfless enough. Now it's time to learn something new. It's time to learn that you're allowed to need, that you're allowed to rest, that you're allowed to take up space in this world without apologizing for it. And that starts now. So how do you heal from childhood emotional neglect? First, you have to understand that healing isn't about fixing yourself. You're not broken, you're wounded, and there's a difference. Broken things need to be replaced. Wounded things need to be tended to. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to tend to the wounds that have been ignored for too long. The first step is reconnecting with your emotions. Because emotional neglect disconnects you from your inner world. You learn to ignore your feelings because no one else paid attention to them. So now, you don't even know what you're feeling half the time. Someone asks, "How are you?" And you genuinely don't know. So you say fine, because it's easier than excavating the truth. But healing requires you to start paying attention, to start asking yourself, what am I actually feeling right now? Not what you should feel, not what would be convenient to feel, but what you actually feel. And this is hard, because you've spent your entire life running from your emotions, but you can't heal what you won't feel. So the first step is simply this: start noticing. Notice when your chest tightens. Notice when your jaw clenches. Notice when you want to run, to hide. to disappear. And instead of pushing it away, get curious. What is this feeling trying to tell me? What does this sensation mean? What do I need right now? These questions are revolutionary for someone who is taught their feelings don't matter. Here are 5 concrete practices that will change your life. 1. Track your emotions daily. Get a feelings chart. Yes, like the ones they use with children, because you never learnt this as a child, so you're learning it now. Every day, check in with yourself and identify what you're feeling. Not fine, not okay. Actual emotions: sad, angry, anxious, lonely, overwhelmed, joyful, peaceful. At first, you might only recognize the big ones, but over time, you'll start noticing the subtle ones, and that awareness is the foundation of healing. 2. Practice describing emotions without naming them. This deepens your emotional literacy. Instead of saying, "I'm sad," say, "I feel heavy in my chest, like there's a weight pressing down. My eyes feel tired. I want to curl up and hide." This helps you actually feel your emotions instead of just labeling them. 3. Identify and honor your needs. Make a list of your needs. Not what you think you should need, what you actually need. Do you need rest? Do you need connection? Do you need solitude? Do you need creative expression? Do you need movement? And here's the radical part. Honor those needs. If you need rest, rest. Don't wait until you've earned it. Don't wait until you've been productive enough. Rest because you need it. That's reason enough. 4. Practice self-compassion. Talk to yourself the way you wish someone had talked to you as a child. When you make a mistake, instead of spiraling into shame, say, "It's okay. Everyone makes mistakes. You're learning. You're human." When you're struggling, instead of pushing through, say, "This is hard. You're allowed to find this hard. You're doing your best." This feels ridiculous at first, but it rewires your brain. 5. Let people in. This is the hardest one, because you've learned that people are unsafe. But healing requires connection. Start small, find one person you trust, and practice being honest with them. Not about everything, just about one thing. "I'm having a hard day. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I could use some support." And notice what happens. Notice that the world doesn't end. Notice that they don't reject you. Notice that vulnerability doesn't destroy you. It connects you. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. This is going to be hard. There will be days when you want to give up. Days when it feels easier to go back to the old patterns. Days when being hyper-independent feels safer than being vulnerable. Days when people-pleasing feels easier than setting boundaries. Days when you'll think, maybe I'm just not meant to be happy. Maybe this is just who I am. But here's what I need you to remember on those days. You're not going backward. You're not failing. You're just scared. And that's okay, because the child in you is terrified. Terrified that if you stop performing, you'll be abandoned. Terrified that if you have needs, you'll be rejected. Terrified that if you're not useful, you won't be loved. And that fear is valid, because that's what happened before. But it doesn't have to happen again, because you're not that powerless child anymore. You're an adult now. An adult who gets to choose who you let into your life. An adult who gets to set boundaries. An adult who gets to say, "This is what I need, and if you can't provide that, that's okay, but I'm not going to shrink myself to make you comfortable." And yes, some people will leave. The people who only loved you when you were useful. The people who only valued you when you were easy. The people who needed you to stay small so they could feel big. Let them go, because they were never your people. Your people are the ones who love you when you're messy, who stay when you're struggling, who celebrate your boundaries instead of punishing you for them. And those people exist. I promise you, they exist. And when you start showing up as your authentic self, needs, emotions, imperfections and all, you'll find them. Or they'll find you. Because authenticity is magnetic. And the life you're meant to live is waiting on the other side of this fear. And here's the final truth. The one that changes everything. You were never too much. You were just surrounded by people who couldn't hold you. Your needs weren't excessive. They were normal. Every child needs emotional attunement. Every child needs to be seen, heard, validated. Every child needs to know that their feelings matter. You didn't get that. But that doesn't mean you didn't deserve it. It means the people who were supposed to provide it couldn't. Maybe because of their own trauma. Maybe because of their own limitations. Maybe because they were never taught how. But their inability to meet your needs doesn't mean your needs were wrong. It means they were incapable. And that's not your fault. You were a child who deserved unconditional love, a child who deserved to be protected, nurtured, celebrated, a child who deserved to make mistakes without shame, a child who deserved to have needs without guilt. And you didn't get that. But you can give it to yourself now. You can become the parent you needed. You can give yourself permission to rest, to feel, to need. You can tell yourself the words you needed to hear. You matter. Your feelings are valid. You are enough exactly as you are. You don't have to earn love. You are worthy simply because you exist. And slowly, over time, you'll start to believe it. Not because someone else told you, but because you told yourself and you finally listened. The child you buried didn't die. They're still there, waiting in the kitchen, at that table, hoping someone will finally come. And no one's coming. Not your parents, not a partner, not a therapist, not me. The only person who can go back and rescue that child is you. You are the one who has to walk into that room, kneel down and say, I see you. I'm sorry no one was there for you. I'm sorry you had to grow up so fast. I'm sorry you learned that love was conditional. But I'm here now. And I'm not leaving. You're safe now. You're allowed to feel. You're allowed to need. You're allowed to rest. You never had a childhood, but you still have a future. And this time, you get to write it. So, write it. Write a story where you're not the supporting character in everyone else's life. Write a story where your needs matter. Write a story where you're loved not for what you do, but for who you are. Write a story where you finally get to rest. You deserve that story. And it starts now. If this resonated with you, leave a comment below. Tell me which part hit hardest. Let's build a community of people who are done pretending to be fine. And if you want more content on healing from childhood trauma, subscribe. Because we're just getting started. You're not alone in this, and you're going to be okay.